Today we explore the tragic case of Itarbeli Lozano in Brazil. Itarbeli lived in what seemed like a peaceful family. His mother, Tatiana Ferreira Lozano Pereira, managed a supermarket, and his stepfather, Alex Pereira, worked as a tractor driver. Itarbeli, known for being polite and friendly, helped his mother at the supermarket and enjoyed music and spending time with friends. However, everything changed when, at 14, Itarbeli revealed to his mother that he was homosexual. This revelation turned his life upside down. Join me as we uncover the full story. Hello? Welcome to the Crime Documentary Files channel. From that moment on, the woman made his life impossible. She constantly made fun of him, and the discussions between them became more frequent. By the end of 2016, the situation between mother and son became worse, going from verbal disputes to physical aggression on the part of the woman. One day after Christmas, the boy made several posts on Facebook, where he revealed what the reality was that he lived in his house. He posted a photograph with his mother, his stepfather, and his brother dressed as Santa Claus to celebrate Christmas, in which he wrote about the family first. Next to said post, he mounted other strong images, where he was seen with cuts, bleeding on his face, back and arms, in which he commented that his mother had beaten him and kicked him out of the house for being homosexual. He also wrote in this post that he was living at a friend's house because his mother had given orders to the boys from the community where they lived that if they saw him, they would beat him. Despite this, the 17-year-old boy, a few days later, returned to his mother's house, but the verbal confrontations continued. In the end, one day she ended up hitting him, so Itarbeli decided to leave again, this time to his paternal grandmother's house. There he had a safe place. His father's relatives accepted him and loved him very much, but Tatiana called him to come home on December 29th, with the excuse that the new year was about to arrive and she wanted to reconcile with her son. His grandmother and uncle did not agree that Itarbeli returned to his mother's house. They did not believe that the woman had actually repented and thought that something was up. But Itarbeli was very happy that in the end Tatiana began to accept him. He wanted to have a relationship with his mother, and with this hope he left his paternal grandmother's house. What he did not know is that Tatiana had actually prepared an ambush for him. The woman had hired two young men, Miller da Silva Bariza, 18, and Victor Roberto da Silva, 19, to beat her son and thus teach him a lesson. As soon as Itarbeli arrived, Tatiana told the young men to go up to a room, where they began a savage attack against him. The boy shouted loudly for his mother to save him, but she remained motionless until her body collapsed. Tatiana's plan had not yet ended. After seeing her son lying unconscious, she told the two young men to kill him, but they refused. Faced with the negative, the woman, who was determined to put an end to the supposed problem that her son was homosexual, went to the kitchen, took a knife, and stabbed him 3 times in the neck that took his life. The men she had hired to beat Itarbeli did not give credit for what they had seen and immediately fled the house. Meanwhile, the woman went to the bedroom where her husband was sleeping and woke him up to help her get rid of the body. They both wrapped him in a blanket, mounted him in their vehicle, and drove him to a desolate and little-traveled area, full of canyons on the road. Here they threw the body. They later returned to the house and cleaned up the mess. The next day they returned to the place where they had left the body, sprayed it with fuel, and set it on fire so that no one could recognize it. That same day, Itarbeli's paternal relatives had not heard from him for a long time. Hours passed, and the young man's paternal grandmother was very worried. She had not called to tell him how that supposed reconciliation with his mother had gone, and also they had already talked before he left that they were going to spend the new year together, and he had not given signs of life on the day of the celebration. So the woman asked her son, Itarbeli's uncle, to accompany her to Tatiana's house to ask about the teenager. They were already very worried and thought that the woman had surely hit him. When the two arrived at Tatiana's house, she looked very worried and calm. He told them that Itarbeli was not there, that he had gone to a friend's house, and that she did not know anything about him. If we think about what Tatiana had just done, the fact that she was so worried is something incredible to think about. Obviously, Itarbeli's grandmother did not know what to do. She did not know whether to trust Tatiana or go to the police. As in the following hours she could not contact her grandson, she decided to go to the authorities. She knew that Itarbeli would not disappear without even telling her where he was. She decided that something else had happened and that the authorities had to get into the case. She commented on everything that had happened, and in addition to that, her son, Itarbeli's uncle, also commented on the bad relationship that Tatiana had with the young man. In addition to that, they told the attitude that she already had when they arrived at the house. She looked, as I told you, calm and carefree. With this, the police began to suspect the woman. She had not reported the disappearance of the teenager, and also that she was so calm was something worrying, so they began to investigate what could have happened, and all the investigation was based around the woman. A few days later, on January 7th, 2017, a patrol found the body of a young man. He was wrapped in a dressing gown and abandoned in the rural area of São Paulo, with bruises from a stabbing and totally burned. In the place, they found a bracelet that had survived the fire. The police speculated about the possibility that the body was that of the young man denounced as missing. Commissioner Elton Tosti Renz, responsible for the investigations, gave the news of the discovery to the boy's grandmother, who recognized that the bracelet was from her grandson. But this was not enough for an identification. The authorities requested DNA tests from the Institute of Legal Medicine with genetic material from the mother to identify him. According to forensic experts, the victim had a death date of 10 days. The investigators also determined that the place where the body was found had not been the scene of the crime, since they did not find evidence there. On January 11th, civil police officers executed a search warrant at Tatiana's residence, where they found the upholstery of her son's bed sofa cut and bloodstains on the foam. They also found 2 kitchen knives with bloodstains, which could have been the murder weapon. The woman and her husband were then arrested. Facing all the evidence and not being able to deny the facts, Tatiana admitted that she had taken her eldest son's life, but a completely different story was invented to what had happened. The woman said that the day she had stayed with Itarbeli, so that there would be a reconciliation, he had arrived at the house drunk at night. He had an uncommon strength and began to attack her husband and her only 4-year-old son. He said that they had acted only in self-defense and that they had done it because they considered that Itarbeli was a danger to everyone. They said that later they had gotten rid of the body because they had gotten very scared and did not know what to say or what to do with the police. The authorities did not believe this story. In addition, she and her husband fell into strong contradictions, so there the police began to realize that they were lying. In addition to that, what the other Itarbeli family members said was very contrary to what Tatiana said. Tatiana said that Itarbeli was a conflictive boy, that he was drugged, that he drank, that he did not like to work, and that he had always been a little loved person in the neighborhood. But the people who knew him and his paternal family said that it was quite the opposite, that he was a responsible, kind, affectionate boy, that he had many friends, that he did not consume alcohol or drugs. The only problem that Tatiana had with Itarbeli, according to all people, was her homosexuality. So here the police already began to see the mobile of crime. They were already very clear that Tatiana and her husband had actively participated in the death of Itarbeli. Another element that was added to the investigation was that Tatiana entered her son's Facebook and tried to delete the post in which the young man told the blows he had given him. But some of the boy's friends managed to rescue the message and delivered it to the authorities. The murder was about to be clarified, as the authorities had the suspicious confession that it was Tatiana. The mobile, her conflictual relationship, the murder weapon and the victim's body, all the pieces seemed to fit, until the mother decided to change her statement and involve 3 more characters in the story: Victor, Miller, and a 16-year-old teenager who served as an intermediary to contact them. According to the new version of the woman, she called the young men to apply a correction to Itarbeli, who had allegedly threatened and assaulted her, but they killed him without his consent while she was out of the house and heard her son's cry for help. Subsequently, the murderers fled, and she woke up her husband, who helped her get rid of the body. The couple's lawyer claimed that Tatiana had acted in a state of emotion and self-defense, and argued that Itarbeli was aggressive and that he had previously attacked his mother and had even tried to hang his brother a year earlier. On January 13th, the officers arrested the 2 young men who stabbed the victim and the minor, who apparently had been the contact between Tatiana and them, and had also witnessed the entire crime. What the teen trio told was very different from what Tatiana told. In her first statement, the girl who was the link between the young men who beat Itarbeli and the woman commented that Tatiana had said on several occasions that she was not at all happy with her son, that she was a very religious woman, and that she wanted to practice a corrective so that he would also be on the supposed good paths. So he asked her if she knew someone willing to beat her, so that supposedly Itarbeli would stop being homosexual. The girl said yes, that she knew her boyfriend and also had a friend who were able to do this for an amount of money. So Tatiana already hired them. They arrived at the house, which is the story that we already know, and after that she took her life. The teenager commented that although her boyfriend and friend left before Tatiana took Itarbeli's life, she witnessed the fact. He saw how the woman went for the knife. When he arrived at the room, Itarbeli was upside down, so he hit him and stabbed him in the neck. The teenager said that Tatiana was going to kill. She gave him parts that she knew were vital, so in the end, the self-defense ended up falling. In addition to that, the 2 boys who had hit Itarbeli also gave 2 very consistent versions. They did not fall into contradictions, and the police believed everything they were saying. They even said that they had not accepted any money from Tatiana, that they were going to do it for free because Itarbeli had really gone and they did not like it, but that they had never thought that the woman was going to ask them to kill him. They also commented, as we already know, that they were not witnesses to the murder, but that they left before. The new testimonies had finished deciphering part of the puzzle, but the police continued the investigations to determine for sure who had stabbed the young man. The images of the security cameras placed in front of Tatiana's residence showed Miller and Victor fleeing the place while she was outside. Then she was seen alone entering the house. For attorney Wenderly Baptista de Trinidad de Jr. and the civil police, it was clear that the main reason for the crime was homophobia, and that all those involved were in the place and participated directly or indirectly in the murder. After having all the evidence on February 9, 2017, the public prosecution presented those involved before the court for the aggravated homicide. In the case of Tatiana and her husband, they were also accused of hiding a corpse. The couple's lawyer requested conditional freedom for both, claiming that Tatiana had acted in legitimate defense and that her husband was sleeping at the time of the murder. The public prosecution considered that the crime was motivated by homophobia, since Tatiana did not accept that Itarbeli was homosexual. The civil police, on the other hand, supported the thesis of the family conflict, alleging a history of assaults between them. The court ruled the preventive prison for Tatiana, Alex, Miller and Victor. In relation to the teenager, the prosecution requested that she be admitted to the Casa Foundation and warned that if her participation in the case was confirmed, She would also be accused of qualified homicide and would remain in custody until the age of 21. Tatiana remained in prison at the Tremembe Penitentiary, awaiting her criminal trial, while her husband and the two young men were transferred to the Santa Rosa David Herbo prison and the Serra Azul Provisional Detention Center. The lawyer for the two boys, Flavio Tiepolo, requested a writ of habeas corpus, arguing that there was no evidence indicating that the boys had committed the homicide, only that they were present at the scene of the crime. However, this request was not accepted. After the preventive prison measure, Tatiana's defense lawyer resigned and was appointed as a new legal representative by jurist Hamilton Paulino Pereira Jr., who based the defense of the woman alleging that her son was a complicated child. He referred to the fact that he had threatened to kill other family members, including an aunt, who, according to the lawyer, had filed 2 complaints against him for death threats. However, the sectional police station reported that these complaints did not exist. The circumstances of the murder, which was reviewed by the main media, shocked the city of 34,000 inhabitants and caused a stir throughout the country. LGBT collective groups demanded the cessation of discrimination against homosexuals in Brazil and warned that crimes for homophobia had increased in recent years in the country. The Facebook page of Itarbeli was turned into a memorial with messages of grief and requests for justice. A few days later, the reconstruction of the crime was carried out. Although all those involved should have been present, only Tatiana was there, since the rest were not allowed to leave the prison due to administrative problems. During the reconstruction, Tatiana was taken back home. Here she told the officers how she had taken Itarbeli's life step by step, gave details of everything she had done that day, and even took them to the place where she had abandoned the body along with her husband, and also where they had burned him. Many people approached the scene to shout things at Tatiana. They told her that she was a bad mother, that what she had done was monstrous, and that she did not have a heart, but several people who supported her also approached. They said that she was a suffering mother who had done the best for her son, and they even said that she was only defending herself. One of the people who defended her throughout the process was her own mother, Itarbeli's maternal grandmother, who said that she had never hated her son for being homosexual. She commented that Tatiana had even gone on several walks with Itarbeli and his other friends who were also homosexual. She said that her daughter was simply defending herself from her son, who was very rebellious. But obviously the police no longer believed these words, and there were more people who did not support Tatiana than those who did. Among all this happened, the Itarbeli had a problem. They had not been able to say goodbye to him. They had not been able to bury the body yet, since the first DNA test that had been done with Tatiana's genetics had come out a non-concluding test. It had not been possible to determine that the body found was Itarbeli's, and this also wanted to take advantage of the defense of the woman. Quickly, the young man's family made another analysis, this time with the genetic material of the boy's paternal grandmother. This time it was already possible to determine that in fact the body found was Itarbeli's, and this was delivered to his paternal relatives so that they could give him a Christian burial. In a felt ceremony that lasted 2 hours, 7 months after his murder, relatives and friends of the boy gave the last goodbye in the municipal cemetery. His uncle and his grandmother pointed out that they had never had doubts that the body found was Itarbeli's, but that they had had to wait for the authorities to have all the evidence in order to bring the responsible to justice. About 200 people made an appointment at the Camposanto and marched through the streets of the city, and then headed to the police station where they demanded justice for the crime. Although not everyone knew Itarbeli in person and repudiated his murder, during the march there were no attacks or offenses against anyone. Only calls for peace and love were made, and they spoke about homophobia and the rates of violence in Brazil. During the months prior to the trial, the the police collected a series of recordings of family neighbors who realized that the problems at Itarbeli's house had actually started when he revealed his sexual orientation. Many claimed that the scuffles and violence were frequent. They even said that Tatiana made fun of him when her son returned home after being beaten by other boys. In October 2017, the public ministry achieved that Tatiana, Miller and Victor were tried by a popular jury as material authors of Itarbeli's death. However, in the case of the victim's stepfather, justice ordered his release for considering that the evidence against him was insufficient to keep him in prison. The court ordered that he should be tried only for the concealment of a corpse and not for murder. The prosecution appealed the decision to release the suspect, while the defense lawyers of the other defendants also presented a resource for them to be released, claiming that the evidence against them was fragile. The case against the mother and the young people involved seemed solid, but the police were the doubt that Alex would not have had more participation than the concealment of the corpse. It was incredible to him that the man had been sleeping and that he would not find out about the scandal that must have been made after the brutal attack against his stepson, especially taking into account that the house had reduced dimensions. In the end, the trial began in November 2019. It was presided over by Judge Marta Rodriguez Maffes Moreira. During the trial, the statements of the 4 defendants and more than 20 witnesses by the prosecution and defense were heard. Finally, on November 27th, a jury made up of 4 women and 3 men sentenced Tatiana Ferreira Lozano Pereira to 25 years and 8 months in prison. This same jury also sentenced Victoria and Miller to 21 years and 8 months in prison. According to the prosecution, they were seduced by Tatiana and beat the victim before stabbing her, which helped in her murder. As for Alex, Tatiana's husband, it was announced that his trial would be rescheduled for a new date, as his lawyer had resigned on the second day of the debate, alleging a conflict of interest because he was also defending Tatiana. For Attorney General Wagner Severino Simoes and his partner Eliseo Berardo, the testimony of the man had been decisive in the conviction of his wife, as he testified that she confessed that she had stabbed the boy with a knife. For the state, the sentences had been satisfactory, while for the defense attorneys, the evidence had not been enough to condemn their clients, and they announced that they would appeal the decision. Itarbeli's family felt satisfied and happy because justice had finally been done, even though they would not have the boy back, whose short life was snatched away by his own mother, just for thinking and feeling different from what she wanted. And that's the end of today's video. This case is incredibly shocking and sad, highlighting the harsh reality that many people still face discrimination, violence, and even murder due to their sexual orientation. The woman responsible is now in jail and will spend many years there, receiving the punishment she deserves. If you found this video informative, please leave a like and subscribe. See you in the next case. Goodbye.